What's going on, creators? I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Today I like to talk a little bit about consciously impressing your subconscious mind with desirable thoughts, and this is something I've spent a lot of time talking about on the channel. But I think it's very important because if you're not consciously impressing your subconscious mind, either somebody else is doing it to you, for you, or you're impressing your subconscious mind with fear and the undesirable. And unfortunately, what's kind of intense about that is that as you're impressing the subconscious mind, it's non-selective. So the same power that can bless you can also curse you if you're fixating on the undesirable and then really putting a lot of energy, which is just your emotions. You can look at emotion as being energy in motion. And are you doing that with the undesirable, fear? Are you pretty much unconsciously creating a hell realm for yourself, a hell experience in your perception of like, oh, people suck, I'm a victim, all this chaos is around me, there's death around every corner, there's always something to be afraid of, things don't work well for me, oh, some people are just born lucky. Whatever the fucking excuse is that you're impressing your subconscious mind with, you can, at this moment right now, choose to consciously allow a new thought to be impressed into your subconscious, one that's empowering, one that's reflective of what your identity is in Christ. Because until you put on the new creation that you are, being born again, so to speak, involves completely dying to the old and not bringing that back into your subconscious awareness unless you choose to experience it, where in the past it was being done to you unconsciously, meaning that you didn't necessarily choose what you were going to impress your subconscious mind with. As far as I'm concerned, there's every state possible that you can imagine exists in creation, good and bad. And for the people that are fixating on the hell and the toilet of creation, there's going to be some poor person that is manifesting that undesirable state. And if you want to spend a lot of your energy and emotion focusing on the downward bottomless pit and just keep going, oh, look at that person there, I should feel bad for them because they're a victim, oh, there's some bad thing happened to them and they didn't deserve it, or whatever, and then that can start to affect our beliefs and our perception about reality and creation. But we don't know how that person was spending the present moment. More than likely, if that negative shit has manifested, they were unconsciously spending a lot of their mental energy in fear, separation, looking at God as being somewhere out in space in the clouds. It's a very common belief. I used to believe that shit. And that's the part of like this process of like awakening, is realizing that at one point we were all unconscious and we were all just being programmed like an automaton. We were all just letting fear enslave us and govern how we spend the present moment. And these ideas of the quote unquote future that doesn't really exist. It's only ever now. And even when that future unfolds in the present moment, there's nothing but this breath, this step, this action in the here and now, what we're doing right now. It all boils down to that, and whether or not you can be in a flow state, in states of harmony and joy, the fruits of the spirit basically manifesting in your experience of life. And the thing to keep in mind is that God is the source for all of those elevated states of consciousness. It's easy, I feel like, this is just a feeling, but it feels like, a lot of Christian people especially have this utopia heaven realm, like a place, that you have to spend the present moment, eternal whatever, in this middle earth experience, just suffering and being experiencing the opposite of God, basically, just feeling what, look at it almost like, if you want to redefine it, you wanted to experience what it was like to be separate from God, which is impossible because God is in all things and within you, so it's like you can't actually be separate. A good analogy is like the sun shines whether you believe it does or not. It's there, and if you're in a room with a curtain, this is what we can do. We can shut the curtain and make up elaborate stories in our subconscious or in our conscious mind to impress into the subconscious of like, oh, the sun is gone. I killed the sun. It doesn't exist anymore. There's no more light, and I'm alone now, and I should be really guilty for killing God. I shouldn't. I should feel shame and guilt for this. This atrocity that I committed by shutting the curtain. But the reality is, you just have to open the curtain back, and then you realize that the sun didn't stop shining, or it's still in the sky. That the only thing that was different was the elaborate stories and shit that you told yourself in the present moment, which is all we're ever doing. And so whenever there's like thoughts of fear, thoughts of danger, thoughts of separation, thinking that things are chaos and random happenstance going on around us, and I get it, because I used to think the exact same way, that Big Bang and things are chaos, and nothing matters, and I'm a brain and a body, and that you're separate from me, and that I'm separate from that person, I'm separate from my life, and there's just all this separateness and these opposing forces that are just constantly at odds with each other, battling or whatever. I used to believe all that shit, hook, line, and sinker. But I don't believe that anymore through experience, though I seeing, and actually through practicing the law of assumption. That stuff just starts to melt away. And the things that are going on in your life, if you look at that as an externalization of consciousness, well, instead of fixating and just constantly being in your mind and imagination about some utopia future, it's about bringing the future to now. And I believe like one of the big eureka moments that that breadcrumb or that golden nugget I've heard, is in realizing that the attributes we give the subconscious is attributes of a divine one mind. There's not separate minds. There's only one consciousness. And, part of our divinity on a lot of levels, you could start to look at all the things that we just nonchalantly attribute to the subconscious mind. And a lot of those are godlike attributes, where it's just like when you really stop and think about all of the things that your subconscious mind is effortlessly doing in the present moment right now. Your heart's beating, your brain's firing synapses, and you're hearing the words coming out of my mouth by a bone in your ear canal vibrating against a piece of membrane, and somehow that's translated into a meaningful communication. You can see me through your eyes that are somehow taking in light, being transmitted through like a piece of a retina. I don't fucking know. It's just like when you really stop and it's like, how is that? It's all calculating at the speed of fucking now, and all of these things. Your skin's just replicating, growing, tanning if you're in a sunny environment, all without your conscious energy or effort. I had lunch, and that's just effortlessly and easily just being digested somehow and turning into a totally different material. There's just so much that you can really stop and be mindful. I cut myself. You can't really see it. It's not, everything's kind of backward. What am I trying to do? I don't know, right. You can kind of see it, like right there. I was like cutting a piece of like peel and stick flooring. I knew it was kind of sketchy to I just had to take off a little bit because the wall was a little crooked, and there's like some shit going on where I just had to trim just a tiny little bit just to get it to fit. And I knew that was sketchy going like that. And so, and we did one of them, and the edge of the razor blade just barely nicked my finger. I thought at first, it was like, when you cut yourself with something really sharp, it's hard to tell if you cut yourself really good, or if you got out of it without any kind of serious thing. And that was the situation, because I hit it pretty good, and it's like, ooh shit, that might be deep. But then I just kind of wait. 10 seconds later, it's not bleeding. 20 seconds, it's like, shit, I must have just grazed it. But then then it started bleeding a little bit. But then I get all these little micro injuries and shit on my hands and stuff just from just doing physical work. I bang finger with a hammer or whatever. But the interesting thing for me, at least, is we're just watching it heal. It's there's nothing I can do to get this little scratch to fix itself. I mean, really, when you stop and think about it, and there's an illusion on some level. I feel like it's a mental illusion where it's this is easier to heal than maybe like a giant scar or something, or a giant open wound. But just having my hip replaced a few months ago, that this has been an entirely like healing experience. It's been really empowering too. As like the healing process has just gone on without me having to like worry about how my bone is going to fuse with this like what is it, titanium? I think titanium hip. Or I had a bunch of fucking staples. I think like 20 or 30 staples that had to come out, and it's like, yeah, I could have possibly died during that, through infection or blood clots or any of that kind of stuff. But, I survived and feel stronger than ever. And like part of like what's going on with me personally as like moving forward and really putting on more and more conscious, subconscious impressioning, where like in the recent past, before having the hip surgery, it was a decay cycle. It was a cycle of death, I feel like, where it's like every day, instead of being optimistic about healing or like how the day is unfolding, how my body's being, how it looks and how it feels, all that kind of stuff, in that downward spiral, it's like, oh, I'm just trying to maintain, I'm trying not to decay even more. I get it. You need all these mental stories of like, oh, well, I don't want to overdo it today, I don't want to be in pain, focusing a lot of energy and attention into that. Whereas now, the entirely different experience, and I want to share that with others that might be in a death spiral of like, oh, things are getting worse and worse, and just letting that shit just run wild in your mind and imagining the worst case scenarios, imagining, well, what would happen if I was in a wheelchair, and what would happen if, this got infected, and what would happen if fear, realizing more and more so that, that the attributes that are attributed to God, like health, love, joy, gratitude, healing, the fruits of the Spirit, those are not separate from your consciousness. It's not somewhere out in space. It's not something you have to earn. It's not something you have to achieve. It's something that's already inherently there as you check these unconscious beliefs and these assumptions that are unserving and if it's not true of God, then you shouldn't be saying it towards yourself, because you are connected with your creator in consciousness, is what I'm trying to say. So it's like, oh, if I'm imagining death, decay, and all these fearful situations, well, God is love, and perfect love casts out fear. So if it's not true of an attribute of heaven, maybe it's a less triggering way to say that, then it shouldn't be applicable to your present moment. Well, that's bullshit, because there's violence and there's danger around every corner, and there's always something to be fearful about. And it's like, well, if you were in heaven right now, because in all reality, God is ever present in the eternal now, and you're not separate from God. So it's like you have all these like ideas of like heaven in the quote unquote future, where God's in control of everything, including how blessed you are and everything else. But in the present moment in this realm, it's like, oh, well, I need to live like a Cleon and flagellate myself and sacrifice and grind and suffer and just take the worst of the worst and all this kind of shit. And it's like you and your creator are connected in consciousness. So it's like, whether you want to do that, if you want to consciously do that's one thing, versus, oh, well, my parents taught me that life is hard and a struggle, and that bad people have abundance, and like that must mean you're greedy and you stole from people. All of these stories, like, who told you that? Did God tell you that? Did you read that in the Bible somewhere? Even some of that religious programming, you should double check. Did Jesus say that? Are you sure that's what it says? Because everybody's got their own kind of take on these things. Not to say that you need to always just be listening to these outside experts, but it's like the expert is within you. So it's like the more that you can really figure that out, I feel like the easiest way is through recognizing the subconscious mind and your conscious mind. There's not two minds. It's one mind. One is selective and the other is non-selective. And you start to learn that through awareness. And by awareness, I mean being present, being still, and being aware of the thoughts that you're thinking. And then realizing that those thoughts are impressing your subconscious, which is the field of awareness that the thought is being brought to. And what I mean by that is when you are being mindful and aware and watching the thoughts, then you start to become one with the observer of the thought, and you're not so invested in thought itself. Even though thought is important, thought and imagination used consciously can manifest heaven and in ideal situations. Realizing that the subconscious, our creator, God, spirit, all these are just words, but those thoughts are also words according to the Bible. And maybe, there can be some debate on that. But, me personally, from my experience with just this spiritual awakening process, I've been led to understand that thought in word, the word made flesh, so thoughts made manifest. It's like the more that you're really focusing your mind, and you don't have to create the thoughts either. It's like you can ask God, infinite intelligence, for help. That's part of this thing. You're not alone. So it's like if you're stuck in these spirals of impressing your subconscious mind with, oh, I woke up today and I going to a job I hate in a body that fucking feels like shit, and I feel unattractive, and now I'm not hitting every red light, and now I just got to constantly just be dealing with this external script from my boss, the media, the culture, blah, blah, blah. I just feel like I'm just an automaton, just waiting for the inevitable death to take me out of this suffering hellhole and put me into a new state. I personally believe that, there's infinite parallel realities happening in the present moment, like a dream, that you can instantaneously start to shift from one to the other through your faith by just believing, for one, that that everything is happening kind of like an illusion, where it's like what's being brought to you is only a reflection of your thoughts. Your life in general, your body, your life, your situations, your relationships, your marriage, everything is one thing, manifesting in different forms, just like our creator wears all these different masks of everything in creation. It's like when they finally, dissolve back into consciousness, it's like God just goes, takes the mask off, and it's just like the infinity becomes the finite to express and understand infinity. It's like this nesting dolls kind of way of thinking about it, if that makes sense. It's like everything is like within externalized, and it's like as you go within and you impress the subconscious through your faith, through what you actually believe. If you actually believe in fear and like this thing happening, and your energy, your emotions, energy and motion is in a fearful state, it means that you believe that this shit could happen, and because you believe it, as your faith is aligned with that, it's done unto you. We reap and sow. That's it. It's like there's no getting around this correspondence. There's law. There's an understanding of grace, which is an evolving understanding, where it's like you understand that only love is real, and therefore everything that's happening in the present moment is perfectly happening for whatever reason. We have a lot of judgments about whether things are happening in a specific way because of our limited understanding, because it didn't recreate the situation from the past that worked out. And that's part of the dramas that can happen, is like getting fixated on past, how it worked in the past, trying to replicate that in the present because there was some maybe success in the manifestation. And by manifestation, I'm only talking about like, oh, I have an idea to start a business. I'm going to bring this to reality and it's going to be successful. It's how well you can bring the inner goals, the vision into reality. It's like, oh, I really believe I could look really nice if I was in shape, for example. When you kind of imagine how you would look, how well can you demonstrate that? Can you bring your body into that kind of alignment with your inner vision? Sure you can. It just takes action and it takes persistence. But the problem is most people don't persist. They'll get confronted with their resistance, because whenever you're switching states or starting to impress your subconscious mind with a new belief, the subconscious already has a reservoir of all of your previous beliefs, and your conscious mind really is the check on whether you are believing insane things or if you're not, and so it's like you can't fool yourself into believing something that you honestly can't believe, but you can start to move in a direction where you do believe something, and start to grow it and evolve it. And through the doing and taking new action, it's all plays a corresponding role. And so, and not to say that there's a limitation to that, because I think ultimately once you advance to a certain level of consciousness, there can be less and less action, because you realize that it's not you that does the work, it's your subconscious, it's God that does the work, and can externalize it to the screen of space, connect with the subconscious mind, because I believe we all share the subconscious mind, and so, oh my God, we all, but it's like, as we share it, then inspiration triggers another person, and it starts to align in a harmonious way. Things start to flow together in a love-based way, versus like trying to manifest things because you're afraid, which is a typical, it's pretty typical of the old mindset. But in experiencing the new creation that you are, you have to start letting those old ways of being go. And so it's like, well, in the past, when I just really need to manifest money because I'm afraid that I won't be able to pay for this, or I'm in scarcity and I'm afraid of scarcity or whatever. I just want all this stuff so I feel safe from danger. That's one thing. Which then actually separates you from what you desire, because you're putting it outside of yourself. For one, it's like, oh, I need to please some external force, which I feel like can be a stumbling block of the law of attraction that I've experienced, where you're like trying to satisfy some external force. But when you realize it's all an internal system of checks and it's like you can't think about harming another, for example, in your mind without it simultaneously bringing your vibration down, because we're connected. And so what you give to another, you receive, because we're connected. We share that subconscious mind, so it's like if you're in fear and scarcity and danger and maybe want to destroy somebody else or like manipulate them so that you feel safe, that's manifesting out of fear, which then actually creates more dangerous situations, because then you're operating from the assumption that you're separate from that other person, you're separate from God, you're separate from the desirable, which you're saying in the present moment unconsciously, meaning you don't actually want this, but you're doing it because you don't know any better. And then your fears come upon you, and then it gets worse, and you double down and you believe it even more. And so like whenever you're faced with the opposite, especially when you're putting on the metaphysical principles in the present moment, and it's like, okay, there's something in me that slightly believes maybe what Mike is saying about impressing the subconscious, for example. And so in doing that, that's the first nugget, that's the first seed that hits that fertile soil of the subconscious. Well, you can start to then get your old mindset coming in and believing the past beliefs in something, and that's bullshit. That's not how things work. Things work because of how I know they work, because of how I was programmed and how I was taught or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, where are we in harmony and where are we not? So it's like, is it where you go from the inner actually affecting the outer? Is that the disagreement? Because it's like, even if, okay, say that doesn't happen, what are you telling yourself all day long? If nothing happens outside of yourself, are you being a critic to yourself? Are you saying, oh, I think that person hates me and they're out to get me, I'm paranoid of that person? Oh, my body feels like shit, I'm slowly decaying, it's not much longer and I'll be dead, or my body will stop working and I'll be a dependent, and whatever. Because that's the reality, Mike. That's what happens. It's like, okay, to you, maybe that happens to you. Maybe that happens to the people around you because they believe the same shit. But is there somebody outside of you that isn't experiencing life like that? I've seen somebody in their 70s with a fucking six-pack. I've seen people in their 50s overweight and on the verge of death. It's all, to me, it's all a reflection of consciousness. And it's all about, it's like, oh, Mike, you should feel sorry for people and this and that. And it's like, there's a point where it's like, if you were taking the impressions of culture or other people and believing them and unconsciously manifesting it onto yourself, and it sucks, and you want help and you want to get elevated and assistance getting out of that state, that's one thing. yeah, I'll pray for anybody that wants to get out of a state, wants help, that wants to just be, if they're unemployed, like Neville Goddard, he always like, well, if they're unemployed, just give them employment, and imagine, use your imagination at the golden rule. How would you want to be treated if you were the same state? Yeah, I'd want someone to elevate me out of that state. If someone's watching this and they're like, "Oh, Mike's in a state," that I was in that, and I spent a lot of time suffering when I was in that state, and he must have drifted into that unknowingly or unconsciously. Yeah, that'd be great if you could, imagine me out of that state, imagine me like abundant and healthy and strong and full of life, and being a good steward of God's creation on some level. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you for that. But if I'm like, no, I don't actually want to experience that. I'm happy with where I'm at. I don't mind suffering. It's like, I'd suffer all fucking day long for all I care. If that's what you want. Most of where it gets difficult is it seems like people don't actually want it, but they get stuck in these cycles, these loops, these addictive thinking, these addicting physical things, whatever, and then they slowly start to decay and go down that bottomless pit into death. But each person is different, but when it comes to my perspective, it's more about, let's impress the subconscious mind more and more so as you're doing that. Then too, what happens is then your perception of reality will start to mirror that new state, and it'll start to solidify outside of you. And then it's like, oh shit, it's like, if this is actually happening for this and everything is just one thing, well, then I'm going to start using my imagination and my beliefs and my assumptions a lot more consciously. And according to the Bible, all things are possible for God to do. So you can be, do, and have anything once you realize that God is a source for those beliefs. And when you realize your relationship is a lot like, the selective and the non-selective becoming one into heaven on earth. What is your ideas of heaven in the future? Bringing that future to now, and start to embody that more and more in the timeless present moment. That's a totally different situation. And as someone who's doing that, it's like my day looks like, every day I wake up, excited about what's unfolding, excited about how my body's feeling, excited about like building, versus like just, oh, this is just my lot in life. It's like you have so much ability to customize your body. Your body's just a reflection of your beliefs, your subconscious. So it's like, if you believe that your spirit and that your body's a reflection of perfect spirit, then perfection should start to manifest in your body as you actually believe that you're one with perfection. One of the things I realized through my surgery and everything is like this inherent healing that's always just going on, where in the past, I was thinking about decay and death. I'd have injuries and stuff that would heal, but then I wasn't putting a lot of attention and energy into how awesome that actually is. How thankful I am that I don't have to fucking think about how to heal these things, that there's just some inherent thing in creation that's telling my cells, to do this. It's awesome. And one of the exercises that can really help get your consciousness not out of form identity is like really stop and think about, where does your consciousness exist? It's a fun exercise in big thinking on some level, because it's like, well, obviously, Mike, it's in the brain. And it's like, is it? What part? Well, the frontal lobe has been shown to be the home of logic and reason, and that's what separates us from the apes and the monkeys and the other animals. And it's like, well, in a brain cell, is that where you're at? Are you in the neuron? Are you in the electron? It's like, at what point, where do you see your consciousness living? It's something to really think about, because even in the world science, they'll say that if you zoom in close enough, it's mostly empty space and electric fields and charges and what is it, quarks, quants, whatever. It's like, are you that? Are you the nucleus? When you stop and think, just do it. Do that for a while and go, oh wait, it's like, where am I? It's like, well, I look in the mirror, I feel like I'm right here, but just an exercise in getting you out of the form identity and into more of like identifying as part of the field of consciousness, realizing more and more so that, oh, I'm telling myself stories about how I'm getting older and, what my body's going to look like when I'm 50 and 60 and 70 and however long, maybe 900, maybe I'll live 1,000 years. Maybe I'll be the first one. Who knows? It's like, or maybe I'll be dead in 5 minutes. What the world calls dead. It's like I feel like we just shift from one parallel reality to the next. And for the ones that are in this level, they see you as dead. I feel like we're already kind of dead. We start off dead, unconscious. We descend into the madness, and then. But that starts to get into, whoa, Mike, what are you talking about? But like the more that you're really focusing in on like this metaphysical principle, it's like, oh, heaven, the veil, whatever we think is the veil, is like, well, if God's spirit is within us and we become one spirit with it, then everything true of that spirit should be true of us. We are healing, we are love, we are these things, and as you really impress your subconscious mind with that kind of big thinking, all things are possible. There's no limits to anything, that God can make anything happen. I don't need to worry about how it's going to happen. That's part of my old beliefs, and that old me is dead. I'm new now. I'm one with my Creator now. I'm one in the body of Christ is another way to say that. That may be not so triggering because, people will hear this message and some people will think I'm like spreading blasphemy, and other people will think, oh, that's the profound truth, and everything else in between. It's like, it is what it is, But ultimately, go within your own consciousness and prayer, which is just that inner conversation that God hears, because God is within your consciousness and is observing every single thought that you're thinking, and then whether you believe it or not, based on your energy. It's like if you're just if you're just fear, and that's what you truly believe, then creation will mirror that back to you. Just the same way as you will experience blessing consciously. So much of it is like unconsciously creating hell for yourself versus consciously creating heaven for yourself by really just understanding. The Bible talks about, if you could get anything, ask for wisdom. So in asking, believing, and receiving, there's a tendency of like the old mindset to be like, okay, well, I want $1 billion and I want, fancy cars and blowjobs and what else do I want? A good, healthy body and all these kinds of things. But like I kind of lost my train of thought when it but this like the more that you start to realize how much that everything is happening through God being the source of it, and that source being within you. As you recognize that spiritual dynamic, the physical is a shadow of the spiritual, and you start to learn that through personal experience. As you really start to change your beliefs, you start to see how these things are like mirrored back to you. Everything is mirrored back to you. And when you really start to embody and believe the things that God said is true about creation and reality and consciousness, and in your energy, your emotions are one with those things, there's no resistance. There's nothing that pushes that away, like, no fucking way, Mike, this is hell, and you need to suffer, and you need to get sick, and you need to die, and you need to get old, and there's heartaches and suffering, and those are life lessons, Mike. That's wisdom. That's how you get wisdom. But it's like, okay, when you can ask for anything, God already answered that question. For one, it's like, what do you ask for? Do you ask for more money, blowjobs, body things, or whatever? He said, no, ask for understanding, ask for wisdom, because through the wisdom and the understanding, through knowledge, all of these things will just start to happen. Because the subconscious is the one that's doing it to you. It's like you're completely powerless in how the state manifests. All you can do is hold on to the vision and the taking action. Thought is the action. So it's like your faith is the action that then everything that corresponds to the state that's in God's control. How it happens. You don't got to worry about the how. If you start to really get into gratitude, living in the state. Law of assumption, like the Bible says it, but Neville Goddard describes it, and metaphysical people throughout the century have described it in great detail. Joseph Brenner, Dr. Joseph Murphy, all of these big names in metaphysics and stuff. I mean, it's common, I wouldn't say it's common knowledge, because like the average person has no idea how powerful they are and how powerful their thoughts and their mind is. But as people are awakening to that, it only takes one person, because we're all connected. And so as you put it on, then the mirror of reality will show everyone around you starting to mirror those things back to you as you believe. It's all based on your faith. And so, but faith is the action. How it manifests. It's like you don't got to worry. Yeah, I've been on like a weight loss thing too, for, I don't know, 2 years, a year. I've lost almost 30, 40 pounds. I don't know. I haven't weighed myself in a couple weeks, but like, I have no ability to like, I don't know what a fat cell's made out of or how to get rid of it. It's like, all I know is like the measure of faith I have is just like, I just stop eating as much and work out, be hungry. And in that hunger, you're losing weight. And your body's like using that time, instead of like digesting, to heal other aspects of your body and all this other shit. I'm like, that's not true, because and it's like, maybe it's not for you, but for me, that's how I've seen results. It's like, I feel like everybody has like their own inner vision on how to manifest all sorts of things. There's probably a million ways to lose weight. This is just how I'm doing it. It's like, and it's worked for me. And it's worked for lots of other people. Well, Mike, what if you have bad genetics? It's like, well, then you'll have to figure out a different way, but like, ultimately ask for the knowledge, ask for the wisdom. And once you have that, then it'll become easy. And so with that being said, I think I'm going to bounce. I just wanted to get on here, bring this kind of stuff to your awareness, give you something to think about, something to impress your subconscious mind with. Faith comes by hearing, and so I feel like it's just, are you open, or are you in resistance? And if you're open in like the alpha, the alpha state, I can't remember what they talk about with television, how it gets you in this like kind of a gamma state, or like an open state where your subconscious mind is programmed by the outer world. Ultimately, it's not really the outer world, but it's your beliefs that are being externalized. And if you like it, it's because you like resonate with it, and you create more of it through your attention and perception and your energy. And so like one of the big life lessons, moving forward, is to focus your attention on the good, because everything exists. God created everything. And so, yeah, and you can choose how you're going to spend the your eternal present moment. You're going to focus on fear and hell and like the illusion. Oh, Mike, you see what's going on in the world? They got war, and they got fear of famines and illness, and it's like, that's what the world does. It's been doing that for thousands of years. Change yourself, and then the world will change. Change your attention, and your personal world will be reflective of that change. Is you can overcome the world, because the overcomer is within you. It's like Jesus already overcame the world, and you are one with that energy. So you've already overcome it, so you just don't realize it or recognize it, but you have. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Thank you for that. Donation link in the description. Oh, Mike's begging for money. It's like, okay, well, if you're in scarcity, don't get triggered. I'm like talking to people that are like in abundance, that aren't triggered by that kind of stuff. But I also appreciate your attention. Hopefully I'm a good steward of your attention for this long. I appreciate you being here. Could be anywhere else in time and space, and you've chose to be here with me. And thank you for that. And with that being said, hopefully this strengthens you and was a benefit. And with that being said, I'm going to bounce. So until the next now, God bless.